So what's Mobclix? Mobclix is the largest mobile ad exchange in the marketplace today, focused on applications. We started the company in February 2008, and we were actually the first company to have a working iPhone ad unit. Developers are always coming to us because not only do they want to understand how the application is performing, but more importantly, how do you make money from your application? Because at the end of the day, your application is becoming a business. So with that, we serve right now about 20 plus ad networks, all hosted in the cloud. 25% of our traffic is international. The rest of that's coming from the United States. We're doing about 4.5 billion ad impressions a month, which is a little over than, 2,000 to 3,000 ads a second from our exchange. And with that, we're about 7,000 publishers, again, primarily focused on the Apple ecosystem. We're also fortunate to be the first company to have an iPad SDK out for analytics as well as advertising. So if you look at the App Store, the key takeaway from that graph is the Android marketplace is focused really on the free apps. Everyone else is focused on paid. It's interesting because if you look at the Apple App Store, 87% of their downloads are from the free apps. So a lot of developers are asking us, how much should I charge for my app? Because in the beginning, the short-term gain is great. But over long periods of time, the total cost of value of a user is actually better if it's free. But again, how do you make it free and how do you make it exciting are questions that developers are always asking us. From there, if you go to the next one, this chart's interesting because we're breaking down by store in terms of what has the most expensive app. You'll find that the BlackBerry store actually has the most expensive app. And from there, then it goes down to Windows Mobile, Android, and then from there iTunes and then Nokia Ovi. And again, it's just interesting to see the ecosystem and how it's evolved over time. We also did a comparison from the Android store and the iTunes store to see the overlap. But I think the key takeaway from the overlap is that the news and sports apps have the two biggest overlaps. So if you're a developer, you're most likely to find news apps being prevalent in Apple as well as Android. So we're encouraging developers to do, of course, things that don't overlap, because then you get something that's unique and exciting. In terms of which app store, right? You made something cool for the Apple App Store. The biggest problem with the Android is complete fragmentation. You have a really cool HTC EVO device that just came out, or it's coming out. You have the Droid phone. But at the end of the day, the biggest problem Android has, we always compare them to Linux, right? You have so many different flavors of Android. Google's working hard at changing it. But again, if you're a developer, you want that one ecosystem, one way to make a device. And I think the two biggest companies doing that the right way is Apple, and Microsoft is planning to do it the right way. But again, let's see how they execute. So a lot of developers are definitely still focused on Apple. Android is getting prevalent because Google's pretty much giving away free phones daily. But aside from that, again, if you're a serious developer, we're hoping that Google fixes the fragmentation problem, because that is the biggest problem, right? If you think about it, if you're making a device, how do you know what to make your app for? So from there, the next big thing is in terms of the experience. This is just a snapshot of Android, OV, Apple, and Windows Mobile. You find pretty much very consistent, very similar. I do appreciate that Android actually tells you a download range. I think that's pretty exciting because then you can say, okay, is this really popular? We're finding that ratings and comments are pretty poor. It's a similar problem to when you see it in Amazon. That means a huge opportunity again. People are doing a very poor job of either complain or they're a competitor. So a lot of people, if you use that as a way to download apps, it's pretty poor. And I think as someone else just said, when you want to market your app, what we've noticed when we study the App Store is within 21 days, if you aren't pushing your app to get downloaded, you're not going to make a top 25, unless you're an outlier. So the first 25 days of your app coming out, that's the most important time to push so many marketing dollars to the channel. We get people coming to us and asking us for what ad network they should talk to help drive installs or CPIs. App Circle is another example. But again, the most important thing to take away is that if you're not figuring out a way to actually have or market your app, it might get dead in the water. And then of course, Apple does pick their favorites in terms of featured apps. And of course, Google has their favorites as well. Then you also get into another interesting thing about carrier conflict. You notice if you do have a Droid phone, for example, Verizon has a channel as well as there's a Google channel. So now you get a lot of consumers who are confused about how do I download my apps. So getting discovered is a key challenge, but it's also interesting to see what the actual vendors are doing to help with discoverability, because people want to give more money through the channel. If you look through the channel, what does that mean? You have the carriers, you have the operating system, you have the devices, and you have the developer. What Apple did is they cut everyone off except for the developer and Apple. What Microsoft is trying to do is, again, they're trying to help the entire channel grow in terms of a business, and then Google said, hey, we're not going to worry about this. Let's just open it and let's see what happens. So without those different dynamics that are happening, it's causing a lot of confusion, and as a result of that, again, Apple, locked as it is, they have it down. Because of their seamless experience, they're helping drive a lot of value. In terms of underserved categories, what we found is games and entertainment, they have lower session usage or session opens compared to utility apps. But if you look at levels of engagement, in a game app or an entertainment app, you have anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes per session. Some of our games in our network, I mean, the user plays it consistently for 30 minutes. It's pretty exciting to see that. Then utility apps, you basically turn off, on, turn off, on. It could be the Foursquares, could be any other Twitter type of applications as well. So again, designing what you want into your application also really drives how you want to monetize it, right? Certain apps are really great for CPC advertising. Certain apps are great for impression-based advertising. But again, it's very interesting. In terms of buzz, we are looking to see what kind of everyone's talking about in terms of chatter. We found that action entertainment are the most talked about, which is, again, actually directly correlated to downloads. In terms of language localization, it's another big question we always get asked. We're finding that aside from English, Japanese is the largest language people are actually making apps for. Everything else, you can just tell, it's completely cut off. So you have these niche markets making something just for French, something just for Spanish. But again, it's very interesting to see kind of where the market is. So in terms of usage statistics from our analysis, very similar. You have a shelf life of 30 days. If you're not going to do something interesting within 30 days, your app's going to get about 50% cut off in terms of people using it routinely. But again, there's all these interesting things you can do with, doing things on promoting, telling your friends, putting some social connections with Facebook, open social, Twitter. There's a lot of interesting strategies that we work with developers on figuring out to help solve that problem. But again, it really depends on the type of app, type of genre, and there's so many variables involved with that. So what's Mobclix? Really quickly, we're the only open, transparent mobile ad exchange. What does that mean? Basically, if a developer wants to monetize their application, basically make money from advertising, without us in the picture, they would actually have to go to every ad network individually. What we're able to provide them is a place where they can go to one place, and from there connect to multiple ad networks, both mobile, online, and rich media. We also serve video, as well as iAd-like functionality, if you will, all through our exchange. So developers, again, don't have to worry about going to each one, and then we help ensure the quality and also the behavioral segmentation gets noted. We also have the standard analytics in terms of crashing, date, device usage, etc. And of course, high brand engagement, right? How do you make sure that people are actually clicking and very highly targeted advertising? We also are fortunate to have a partnership with Nielsen. This allows users, for us, to have a better understanding of who they are. Again, going back to developers. And we also recently did a challenge where we said, okay, let's just use AdMob, for example, where developers said 50% of the inventory was going to go to AdMob, and the other rest of them is going to go to Mobclix. And we were fortunate to, of course, win that challenge, not because AdMob is bad, it's just saying that if you just use one ad network, you're limiting yourself a lot, right? You cannot beat 20 plus ad networks who are all doing premium sales against one ad network all the time. And we've been fortunate to have really good press on Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. And that's it. So thanks so much for your time.